Oh, sorry. 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 What's going on, everybody? My name is Frank Davalos, and I'm here to talk about one of my favorite medium format cameras of all time, the Fuji GS645S. Let's get undone. Bum, bum, da 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 dun. Let me tell you guys a little bit about why I love this camera, because I bought it about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's sort of been my go-to film camera pretty much since the day I purchased it. One of the things I was looking for at the time was sort of a way to get into medium format photography without, you know, spending the amount of money that you'd normally spend to get into medium format photography. So I had been shooting film for about a year and a half at that point, and I was using a Epson V600, and I wasn't getting super sharp scans on my 35mm film, so I wanted something that had a little bit bigger negative, but also was portable, light, easy to use, and then a good entry into, you know, sort of that medium format lifestyle that we all love and crave so much, so deeply, so fucking deeply. So after kind of looking around online, I was reading about all kinds of portable ones. There's Fujifilm. So after sort of scouring online, just kind of trying to research, you know, what sort of fit into everything that I was looking for in a medium format camera, I decided to start looking around for the Fujifilm lineup of medium format cameras. And then ultimately what ended up happening was I found the GS645S from somebody that I knew locally who was selling one. And it was an amazing shape, and, you know, it just seemed like too good to be true. So I did a little bit of research, and after sort of figuring out that it did seem like a good, suitable camera for me to get, I hopped into it, and without further ado, let's stop talking and I'll tell you why I, after almost 2 years, have fallen in love with the little piece of shit. Okay, so I figured I'd just rip through some of the things that I love about it. One of them being, of course, that it's small, portable, and lightable. Lightable. It's fucking lightable, bud. But look at it. I'm a small guy. I'm 165 centimeters, or for the imperialists, I'm 5'5", just a teeny tiny little tiny guy, okay? And this camera is teeny tiny as well. It fits into pretty much any backpack. It's as small as any camera that you'd pretty much use, unless you're, you know, into like super small mirrorless cameras. But even, I never really understand why people make such a huge deal about weight when it comes to anything this size or smaller or bigger. Like, here's the Sony a7R III. In comparison, this is with the 24-70G master lens, so huge lens. And the Sony is definitely heavier, definitely bigger, and I don't even think the Sony is very big. So yeah, so one of the things that I really love about it is that it's super small and portable, which means you'll pretty much be fine to take it anywhere, and you'll actually want to take it anywhere. I shoot also with the Mamiya RB67 Pro S, and that thing is a fucking beast. And that, when you get to that level of size and weight, that I understand why people are concerned about size and weight. But anything in this sort of form factor is fine. You can take it anywhere, put it in any backpack, and it's fine. You don't have to be so intentional if you're going, you know, on a trip, or even if you're just going into the city and you're on the train, you can comfortably have it in your backpack and not worry so much. So the number one thing that I love about this camera is just its size, its weight, its portability, and the fact that you want to bring it wherever you go, and you can. And it's a medium format negative, so I love it. Another thing that I really love about this is its 60mm, beautifully sharp and crispy Fujifilm classic lens. If you look at it, there's like a little weird bar right here. Some people hate it. I personally like it. I like the aesthetic of it. It looks so sweet. It's perfect for my aesthetic. I like it. Yes, it sticks out a little bit, just like the little red zit on my nose. But at the end of the day, I think it really adds to the design, and it also kind of, I don't know if it would protect the lens as much per se. It is sort of a plasticky feeling design, but I don't know. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I don't drop my cameras, so it is what it is, and that's a lie. I've dropped a camera and broke a lens before, but that's neither here nor there. But the lens is truly one of the nicest lenses I've ever used on any camera ever, period. Some of the shots you can get with this thing, especially if the lighting conditions are right, it's so sharp, so crispy, so beautiful. Every time whenever I develop my film and I go in to scan it, I'm just like, I'm always pleasantly surprised and wonder every time, like, why don't I use this camera every day? This lens does not come off. It's not interchangeable. You're stuck with this lens. And that's another huge pro, I believe, is that it really forces you to sort of stick with one focal length and not wish for greener pastures. Okay, so let's talk about the light meter. This is another thing I really love about this camera, is that the light meter is exceptional. I've pretty much shot with this camera in every lighting condition I can think of, and the light meter is as accurate as an actual light meter. So my last shoot I did with a local model named Hannah Audette. We were shooting film and digital that day, but we went into sort of a darker, lofty type warehouse building, and I was metering with my spot meter pretty much the whole time. But just for this particular purpose, I decided to just kind of compare it to how the light meter inside the camera worked. And the two were pretty much identical. The light meter is incredible. I've never had an issue. I would feel comfortable leaving my light meter at home in pretty much any situation imaginable. Let's talk about the rangefinder design. So this is one of my favorite looking cameras that I've ever owned. It's right up there with the design of my Nikon F3. I just love sort of the sleekness of it. I love the pattern texture on the back. I love the front, how it truly looks like sort of an old school camera, but almost like a refurbished, like refreshed version of it. I love the rangefinder design in general. So it really is like one of my favorite looking cameras ever. And that's why when I'm not using it, I have it sort of displayed on a shelf somewhere or up here with all my other, you know, sexy cameras. Some things that I actually love about the functionality of the design. The first thing I would say about this camera is that all of the dials that you're going to need to operate it are actually on the lens itself. So if you look closely, you have your ISO, or ISO as the nerds say. You have your ISO, your shutter speed, your aperture, and your focus ring all on the lens. And at first I didn't really like this because I just found it sort of clunky and sort of weird in general. But I will say I've really grown to love that experience, because once you get super good and super familiar with the lens itself and the dials on the lens, it's just quick. You're just like a little ninja, you know, switching dials. You can kind of get a feel for each individual dial, and you just remember instinctively what that dial is for. So usually, you know, the aperture dial, it's here, you set it, and then the focus ring has this perfect little thumb, if you can see it, this perfect little thumb rest. And so it's just super nice to just back and forth, nice and easy like that. So it's really, really great. You can shoot 120 or 220 film on this. I think you get, I want to say 15 shots when you're shooting 120. So 15 frames usually. And it's just truly one of the best cameras somebody could own. Whether you're, you know, a medium format connoisseur, or whether you're just a beginner looking to start out, this camera is kind of, I feel like it's for everyone. I've been shooting medium format now for 2 years or so. And yeah, I just feel like this camera sort of bridges the gap between 35mm and medium format so beautifully. And it's just a camera that you should always have on you at all times. And then finally, I think one of my favorite weird little things about this camera is that in the rangefinder, it's set so that when you are looking at it like this, it's actually in a portrait orientation. So if you want to shoot horizontally with it, you actually have to, the way that you'd normally turn your camera for a portrait photo, you have to do that instead for a landscape photo, which as a portrait photographer, as someone who takes a lot of pictures of people, I really love that because I never have to turn my camera. And also it's kind of like a unique way to shoot because most cameras aren't that way. And there are like a couple things that I don't love about this camera, but it's sort of like there's give and take in every relationship, you know, and there's ups and downs and things that you need to learn to accept. And, you know, and that's what true human growth is about. And so this has a lot of things that you kind of have to let go. Some people see that as like a con. Myself personally, I see that as sort of like an exciting way to test myself as a photographer. But I'll talk about them anyways because I know that some of the nerds out there definitely care about this kind of thing. And that's just dumb, but I'll still tell you about them. Okay, so number one, the focus patch isn't the easiest focus patch to deal with, especially when you're under weird lighting conditions. When you're inside, let's say, and you're shooting handheld, and you're trying to focus on a subject, it can sort of be difficult to get the focus patch to line up because you can't see it. It's not super bright the way it is in other cameras that I've used. So, but on the other hand, this has also made me kind of learn how to read and use the distance scale a lot better. So when I'm maybe 2 meters away from a subject, I instantly just go to the distance scale, set it to 2 meters, and then I can kind of putz around there, wiggle my thumb a little bit and see if I can sort of tell if it's in focus or not, which that's been a huge skill that I've developed because of the limitation of this focus patch. So that's one thing that could be better, but it also isn't a deal breaker. I'm outside shooting this thing a lot, and outside it's fine. It's a small focus patch, but it's fine. It's completely fine. Another thing that I don't love about this camera is the medium focus distance. I would say this is its fatal flaw for someone like me who likes to get sort of up close and personal sometimes. The closest you can really get to somebody, I think its minimum focusing distance is like 0.7 meters, which is, you know, like 2.5, it's like 2.3 feet to be exact. That can be kind of challenging when you want to get like a super nice creamy portrait. But as a portrait photographer, this is kind of like my go-to environmental sort of portrait camera, I suppose. If you're getting tight headshots of somebody, you're probably not going to take it out with you. But if you want to get somebody and capture them in their environment, it would be great for street photography. This is sort of the camera to use for something like that. So that's kind of my biggest gripe with it, is its minimum focusing distance. But I mean, there's ways around it. And again, not every camera is perfect. It just forces you to shoot a little differently. And to me, in this day and age when making pictures is so easy, that's kind of like a welcomed thing for me in the way that I shoot. One more drawback is that the shutter speed only goes up to 1/500th of a second. When I'm shooting outside anyways, I have no problem, you know, going to a smaller aperture, whether it be f8, f11. It doesn't, I don't mind when things are in focus. I know a lot of people might, but I don't. And there's always ways around that. You can get ND filters and things. I'm pretty sure you can thread on an ND filter here. It looks like you can. It has some thread marks. I've never done it because I've never felt the need to. But it's definitely, one thing I will say is you will have to get a special ND filter that fits this thread. I'll put it up on the screen, whatever the thread size is, but you won't be able to sort of use your biggest ND filter and use step up rings because of that little bar that goes over the lens. But that's neither here nor there. You might be like me and not even see a need to use an ND filter for this kind of thing. But if you wanted to, you could. The option's there. So kind of a con, kind of not really. And then the last thing that I have that I would say about this camera is it's probably not your go-to night shooting camera. For some reason, I'm not sure if this takes like a special cable release or maybe just my copy. The shutter button doesn't function the way that it should, but I haven't been able to thread on a cable release for this thing and have it function properly. So I think I've tried 2 cable releases now and neither of them have worked. I was reading the manual and it said that you can thread a cable release on, so a part of me thinks it might just be my copy. This isn't probably the camera that I would take out night shooting anyways, but if you wanted to, I suppose that you could. There's this T function that it has right here. If you can see this T button, if you press that down, I believe it opens the shutter, and then the way to close the shutter is to click the shutter. But This obviously you'd be worried a little bit about shake, I think. So that's where a cable release would come in handy. So there must be some type of cable release you can get that works, or maybe they all work and my copy just fucking sucks. So I guess there are a few drawbacks now that I say them out loud. But I don't know, like the whole reason I feel like I got into film photography is to sort of embrace drawbacks and embrace slowing down and shooting differently and embrace sort of feeling challenged, because it's so much more fun and rewarding to be challenged. And that's why I don't look at things like, you know, a sort of dim focus patch or minimum focus distance as so much of a con, as opposed to a drawback that forces you to sort of shoot differently and still accomplish great results doing so. So that is what it is. One of the other great things about this camera is that it's very cheap. I bought my copy for $500 Canadian. So that's like $300 US or something like that. Something insane for a medium format camera. And sure, it's not going to be perfect for every situation, but I think it's a really great camera to purchase when you're getting into medium format photography. And I also think that if you've been shooting medium format forever, that you would have a ton of fun with sort of medium format in such a small, lightweight, portable, and easy to use package. This camera gets used all the time for me. It's the camera that literally comes every single place I go. I take it with me. That's it. That's my review of the Fujifilm GS645S. Thank you guys all for watching. Should we get a round of applause for my first ever YouTube video? I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. I just know that YouTube and the community in YouTube has helped me in photography and learning. For years, I've been, you know, an avid watcher of YouTube. And I've always thought that it would be fun to make videos, and I recently just shut down my business because I had a kid and I wanted to have a little bit more time to focus on my kid and, you know, shooting weddings all summer and editing weddings all summer and things like that. That just isn't the easiest thing to do when you have kids, and I'm not one of those people that are motivated by money, so I figured I'd shut down the biz and then I'd maybe take on a YouTube channel and see where that takes me. So thank you guys all for listening to me and my mustache ramble on. If you got something out of this video, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if you have questions. I'll definitely answer them to the best of my ability. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video. Alrighty, ciao. Bye-bye.